Welcome to Whisper Woods Stories. We're going to take a break from Bedside Manor and do a new story. I thought this would be a good fit as it takes place during Thanksgiving. And in fact, it was written by me, Whisper Woods. This will be this story's first debut on the internet, so thank you for listening, and have a happy Thanksgiving. A Needle and Thread. One, two, tie my shoe. 3, 4, lock the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, aim them straight. 9, 10, do it again. This was the rhyme that my gran always sang to us as kids. My older brother, Gene, my younger sister, Nat, and me. My name is Catherine. This song that Gran always used to sing to us wasn't exactly true to the original, as Nat has since been apt to point out, but we enjoyed it all the same. Though Gran has changed in some ways, she hasn't in others. She's gotten much older. Her dementia is an odd thing. Something no more than a child's meaningless song has become a thing that she repeats, over and over again, as if tapped into some radio airing a broken record nonstop. Whenever you're staying at her antique home, you can often hear the chant echoing through the old bones of the house, the ancient air ducts carrying the tune as surely as a messenger. My mom has been staying there to help Gran. My mom sold her own home anyway. She was too lonely in that house without my dad, and doesn't want to send Gran to a retirement home. I've heard the stories of others who have experienced dementia in their families, but I don't think that I've seen another case quite like Gran's. The effects of dementia can often be a case-by-case basis, Gran's doctor had said. She'll likely exhibit odd behaviors that can be quite unpredictable and maybe even change those habits in a day or two. So far, there have only been 2 major changes in Gran. Along with the constant mumbling of that song, Mom said Gran has been sitting in her basement office for most of the day and night. I thought Mom was being silly. Gran had to leave that basement at some point, right? "It's so odd," she said on the phone. Worry was plain in her voice. "She just locks herself down there during the day. Often I hear the basement door close multiple times in the middle of the night, though, but as long as she's okay, I don't see the harm in it." "That's strange," I said, distracted as I packed clothing into my suitcase. The news was on in the background. I paused in my packing to see familiar faces on the screen. The reporter stood left of 4 portraits, outside of a bank that was surrounded by policemen, firefighters, and ambulances. "The criminals escaped police arrest," the reporter said. "But they have assured us that they are on the trail of these 4 men, and ask that anyone with information call 911 to report." There were clear mugshots of 3 men, but the 4th was only a blurry image, likely from a security camera. The 3 clear pictures were of my uncles, Jack, Nick, and Sean. We referred to them as the asshole half of my mom's side. They had gotten themselves in major trouble with the law, and are fresh out of a 10-year sentence. It's not often that someone has a group of known bank robbers in the family. I learned that rather quickly. "Oh, by the way, your Gran scared me the other night," my mom continued. "I nearly jumped out of the bed. I heard the downstairs door close as usual, but didn't hear it again. It seemed odd, but I tried to go back to sleep. After 30 minutes or so, I woke up around 1 in the morning to the sound of breathing right above my head. I screamed, of course, but when I got the lamp on, it was just your Gran. She smiled at me and went back to her business in the basement." "Jesus," I muttered. "I still don't know what goes on in that room," my mom said. She wouldn't let me in even when I told her that I had finally set up that TV. After days of confusing instructions, once I saw her holding a little doll that she had crocheted. Seems she's back into some old habits. I paused. Did she say anything when you saw her in your room? Not that I could hear. She mumbled something or another, maybe that rhyme, but that's it. She did always enjoy hide-and-go-seek with you kids. Her doctor said that her reclusiveness might have something to do with that somehow. Weird. Do you know if Aunt Beth is coming to Thanksgiving after all? I'm not really sure, Mom said. You know how she is. How about you? Ready to make that long drive? Ready as I'll ever be, I guess. We both paused for a second. Even though I couldn't see Mom's face, I thought that she knew what I would ask next. Mom, have the police called you? She didn't answer at first. When she did, she was hesitant. Yes, and I told them that I haven't seen them since they were put in prison all those years ago. When I said that most of the family was gathering, they said that they wanted to meet and interview us after our Thanksgiving, given that they caught them last time when they came to your grand's house, she said. Well, I'll let you go then, so you can get on the road. Love you, Kate. Love you too, Mom. See you soon. Click. I was on the road within the next hour, toward my family's yearly tradition for Thanksgiving. Every year since my dad and Pap died in 2003, our whole family has been meeting up and staying the weekend at Grant's house. Her house may be old, but it's big, and has enough guest rooms for all of us when we're not afraid to bunk. The drive was 4 hours long, though. Half of it was on major highways, and the other half was through long neglected dirt roads. At least the area was pretty, through a mountain pass and a darling forest, especially when it was fall like this. My boyfriend would have been able to keep me company too, but he had found another reason why he couldn't come this year. The guys want to take me canoeing again down this or that gorge, or something like that. But I don't care. Not this time. I was excited to meet my brother's husband. The whole way there I listened to some of my favorite podcasts, then music, then switched to an audiobook after I stopped for gas. Then when I was tired of all of those, I kept it silent for a while, and my thoughts hung around me. I thought about Gran. I hope that she's okay. She hadn't really been treated right towards the beginning of her dementia. The asshole half of my family kept her degrading condition a secret from us for 1.5 years because they were the only ones that still lived here in this old town. They kept it a secret so they could use her house to hide their criminal activity. They even tried to steal what was remaining of Gran and Pap's small oil fortune. When the news of my uncle's crimes broke long ago, we kicked them out and called the police when they threatened us with violence. That and some other charges were the events that put them in prison for 10 years. They would have been in there longer if the police had solid proof of their bigger crimes, but it slipped through the cracks. When they were jailed, they were on the news, and they shouted at the camera, "We're coming for you the second we get out, you hear us?" Needless to say, most of us were worried. I wasn't the only one nervous about their currently unknown whereabouts, but the police will keep us safe. After a while of these thoughts, I had to turn the radio back on. Eventually, I made it to Gran's house, and my mom greeted me. I got to take my pick of her room as I was the first one there. It sounds strange, but there are 2 master bathrooms and bedrooms in Gran's house. Mom uses the first, and I got the second. I unpacked my stuff all over the place. Suck it, Aunt Beth. It felt strange to be here again. I hadn't come for a whole year, and it felt like the house had noticed. The air was almost stale and unwelcoming. Though my mom kept the house magically clean, a little dust erupted from the bed when I leapt onto it. As I laid there, I stopped my coughing to hear a soft hum. I soon recognized it as the lines of a song that were crawling up the inside of the walls. If not for the tune, I may not have known what the words were. 1, 2, tie my shoe. I felt a shiver. I guess Gran was in the basement then. Her office was near the open ducts of the AC and heater, but still, the lilting tune was eerie at best. I could only hope I didn't hear it while I was trying to sleep. Slowly, by passing hours, the rest of my family came trickling in. There was Jerry, my uncle, married in by my Aunt Beth. They had 2 young sons, Albert and Reggie. Jerry had red hair, and so did his 2 boys. Aunt Beth prided herself on the expensive makeup she constantly wore. Next was my Uncle Ryan, a taller and larger set man with a balding head. Then Uncle John, a man with louder opinions. He was in his 40s. Then my Aunt Charisse with her daughter and son, Emily and Al. Lastly, my brother Gene and his new husband, Alex. My younger sister Nat was in tow also, having hitched a ride with my brother. It was nice to see everyone again, but something else was on my mind. While me and Mom waited together, our pleasantries exchange turned into a talk about my uncles, the asshole half, that is. The most recent bank that they had robbed was only 3 hours from here. Worry was no doubt plain on my face, but Mom reminded me. We have restraining orders against them, remember? I knew that signed pieces of paper would hardly matter to convicted criminals, but I didn't see the need to bring that up. My mind was messing with me. Would they come back? I shivered at the thought, at my worst nightmare. We all spent some time catching up with each other. Alex was even nicer than Jean had described. My family brought up new jobs, classes, and so on. Sometimes, you would have to face the disappointed stare of someone if you had nothing new to offer. You haven't changed every inch of your life in a year? You don't have a master's degree in physics yet? It gets old. Eventually, though, our family split up to either check on dinner or claim their rooms. It left me, Nat, Jean, Alex, and Mom in the expansive lobby. Hey, Mom, where's Gran? Jean eventually asked. I'd like to introduce her to Alex. There was a pause. Everyone looked at my mom, who glanced nervously towards the basement door across the lobby, under the stairs. In the silence, I almost thought that I could hear the low chant of that song, crawling up from the basement again. She keeps herself completely busy, my mom began. Ever since her diagnosis, you know, she's mostly fallen back on old hobbies, like sewing and crochet. I'm sure that she'd love to meet you, Alex, but we should just wait for her to come up on her own. The smell of turkey will call to her if nothing else will. My mom's tone was cheery, as it always was, but there was something else in her face that I couldn't quite read. Nervousness? Fear? Why don't we play some games while we wait? I offered to Nat. I hope you brought some good games on that Switch this time, Jean said. No bargain box off-brands? Nat squinted her eyes at him. Just because you're a closeted weeaboo doesn't mean you have to hate on every piece of media that has an anime girl in it, she snapped, flipping him off. Natalie, cut that out, Mom said, gesturing to Nat's raised middle finger as if trying to wipe it away. There's a TV upstairs in the bedroom that Catherine claimed. We'll call for you if we need your help with the turkey. I'm sure that Uncle Ryan's got the turkey covered already. Jean made an intentionally offensive gesture as if his belly were expanding. You're awful, Mom said, but hid a surprised chuckle. I'll be sure to pester you when you gain a few pounds. When Mom walked away, Alex stared at Nat and Jean. Off to a great start, I said. We headed upstairs and hooked up Nat's console to the TV. We were halfway through a race in Mario Kart 8 when the TV started to flicker. Nat was already losing big time, but the glitching happened mostly over her little corner of the screen, and she couldn't see a thing. I came in first, Alex in second, and Jean in sixth. Nat had kept her calm up until her do not finish. "Crap!" she shouted, as if a limb had been cut off, and threw the controller into the wall below the TV. Alex began to chuckle at the display, but quickly put a hand over his mouth. Jean released a booming laugh that hid my own. Nat glared at us, but she was blushing fast. "What the hell is up with your HDMI cable?" Jean asked Nat, as the glitching poured over the TV. "It can't be my stuff. It's gotta be Gran's dusty artifacts." "You're a tech, aren't you, Alex?" I asked, still smug about my first place win. "What would you say the problem is?" "In my expansive realm of expertise," Alex said sarcastically, "I deem that it has to be your cable. Sorry, Nat." "Well, what now then?" Nat said. "I doubt Gran has any sort of cables to replace it. I'm surprised there's a TV newer than 2001 in here." "Gran's bound to have something around here," I said. "Mom talked about setting up another TV in the basement." "Yeah, but that's in..." Jean paused for effect. "The basement." He wiggled his fingers ridiculously, like an over-theatrical ghost. There was silence for a time, as we all looked at each other. I rolled my eyes. "Fine, I'll go look," I said. As I left, I heard Nat still arguing over the cable, but watched as Alex pulled it from the TV, and the glitching stopped. Nat folded her arms in defeat. My steps echoed as I went down the long stairwell that brought me back to the lobby. I heard the rest of our family in the kitchen, laughing as the smell of our Thanksgiving feast filled the air. I thought about asking Mom where a cable might be, but based on the call where she had told me about setting up the TV, she might not know what I was talking about. No one else other than Mom had been here in a year anyway. Before I went further downstairs into the basement, I decided to check everywhere else first. I wasn't scared, but I didn't want to disturb Gran. I checked in the unoccupied rooms. I glanced at Aunt Beth through a crack in the door and saw her giving the room a disgusted look. No TV or electronics. I searched room after room, drawer after dresser, but I couldn't find anything besides a frayed aux cable. Eventually, I was staring at the basement door. By this point, dinner was still being made, and the smell was more powerful than ever. Hesitant, I placed my hand on the diamond-shaped handle of the basement door and turned. The door was old and stuck a bit. I had to tug. I clenched my fist and pulled. A popping snap echoed throughout the lobby, but the majority of the noise went directly down the dark stairs. I studied the shadows. Nothing seemed to react to the noise. I couldn't hear a thing. My hands shook slightly, as if I had disturbed a nest of snakes and was waiting for them to leap for me. Then I caught myself. "Stop being stupid," I thought, and started creeping down the narrow staircase. "It's just Gran." There had always been something about Gran's basement that scared all of us as kids, my mom included, but it's only a silly thing, something you grow out of, right? Then, why was I feeling this way? Each step disturbed the quiet with a small creaking. Eventually, I found myself on the soft entry rug covering the cold concrete of the floor. It was dark, but my eyes adjusted enough to see. The space had the usual suspects: Gran's air heater, an old washer and dryer, a water boiler, and so on. But the rest of the room had been turned into an almost antique living space. The furniture here was at least from the 50s and was musty with age. Some pieces were covered by dusty tarps. I hadn't really ever seen this furniture before in Gran's house, but then again, I doubt that I've explored the whole place. As I looked over the large but cramped space, I saw the flat-screen TV that Mom had mentioned on a previous phone call. It seemed like it might be the newest thing in this house. I started to creep towards. I paused. 1, 2, tie my shoe. 3, 4, lock the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, aim them straight. 9, 10, do it again. The song took no more than 30 seconds for her to sing, especially in the almost panicked chant. Her muffled voice came from somewhere. I couldn't tell where, though. Gran repeated it, again and again, and I noticed something else. 3, 4, lock the door. I was able to look where the song was coming from this time, off to my left, right by the stairs. There was a door there. It was Gran's office. I heard the little lock mechanism in the handle. Click. 5, 6, pick up sticks. I heard many pieces of thin metal clinking together like needles. 7, 8, aim them straight. Next, there was a sound like stone over a metal edge. I kept moving over to the TV, a voice in my head repeatedly asking if a replacement HDMI was really worth it. I chastised the thought. Why was I so scared? Something strange was going on, but it was still Gran in there, right? I watched the door as my feet slid across the shag rug. I saw a shadow pass by the underside of the door as the song bounced around her basement. Then there was a squeak as I took my last step. The sound broke the silence, shattered it like a pane of glass falling onto an empty street. The sound was almost like a dog's toy. The song halted. I looked down at my feet to see a crocheted doll. Its features and proportions were simple, almost like something chibi out of one of Nat's animes. It had black buttons for eyes that stared up blankly. Its hair was red, and I recognized it. It almost looked like... Gran's door unlocked. The door by the stairs began to creak open. I don't know why, but I had the powerful urge to hide, so I darted and crouched behind the large sofa that sat in front of the TV, leaving the doll on the floor by the entertainment center. I watched around the corner. I felt like the kids in Jurassic Park, desperately hiding from the raptors in that kitchen. I tried to tell myself, it's just Gran, idiot. But no amount of convincing moved my shaking legs an inch. I felt terrible, as if I was labeling Gran's condition as something to be afraid of, but that wasn't it. The door came fully open, and I watched a slim shadow step out. A heavy breathing replaced the song now. She walked towards the back of the room. She was concealed in the dark. The only source of light was a dim lamp inside of the room that she had left. Like I said before, the basement was large, and it took Gran a solid few minutes to shuffle her way to the other side. When she was there, she simply stopped herself at an antique chest and unlocked it to dig around. I sat there. 5 minutes. Gran was still digging in the chest. I looked inside of her still open room. I looked back to Gran, then at the stairs. I found myself creeping across the carpet. I thought that I might be planning to leave, but apparently my subconscious had a different idea. I stepped inside of Gran's room. It was dim, but it was much easier to see than the dark of the main basement. The edges were covered by a wallpaper wrapped in ornate red roses, with stripes down the center. The room was a mess. Furniture was overturned, items for crochet, knitting, and sewing strewn across the floor. But there was one place that was perfectly kept and tidy. I saw a line of dolls on top of an antique table, and an exact, organized pile of sewing needles, the points aimed at each doll. I counted. There was one needle for each doll, but I knew that I was just distracting myself from the more obvious sight. There was a doll for all of us. They had our features. Mom, Nat, Jean, Beth, Alex, everyone except Uncle Jerry that was on the floor by the TV. There was even a doll for those members of the family that no one spoke to anymore, the asshole half. The only person missing was Gran herself. There was a doll for my long-passed-away dad and Paps, but those were set aside, laying on a bed of protruding needles. Lastly, there was one that I did not recognize. What the hell? I heard a shuffle. Gran was coming. I rushed out. I didn't care if she saw me. She was coming around the side. I couldn't make it to the stairs before I would meet her. She had seen me. I knew it. I stumbled on a frayed corner of the rug in my rush. I fell. I laid again near where I hid, next to the doll of Uncle Jerry. Gran's dark form was faceless with the light hiding her features. She loomed like a wolf seeing a rabbit caught in the brush. Gran's shadow completely towered over me, blocking the light. In the dimness, I could barely make out her long smile as she leaned down, her frail hand lowered towards me. I closed my eyes for a moment, but nothing happened. When I opened my eyes again, Gran was holding the doll of Uncle Jerry. She examined it carefully, as if checking for damage, before turning and walking away. She stepped back into her room. 1, 2, tie my shoe. There was a tap as the door closed. 3, 4, lock the door. I heard the lock click again, and the song continued. I stared. Sweat ran down the side of my face. I breathed heavily. I mutely gathered the cord and walked back up the stairs. It's just Gran. Just Gran. Something odd had happened when I returned. Uncle Jerry complained of a sudden headache, as though he was whiplashed suddenly in a direction, but it seemed to go away in an hour or so. My stomach dropped, but I didn't know what it meant. Just a coincidence, I thought. We had dinner hours later. The sun was setting now. And I told that bastard... John paused, glancing at me and my siblings, and my mom. We're not 10 anymore, Nat said. See? Watch. Bastard, bastard, bastard. The 4 young children that sat at a smaller table a little ways away turned to look at Nat. Natalie, my mom said, but was already chuckling. A round of laughter rolled across the table, but it stopped with me. Everyone had been picking up on my estranged mood. Eventually, my mom asked, Honey, what's wrong? She's probably sour that she got second place in our last race, Gene mused, sliding a slice of turkey onto his plate. I didn't answer at first. I saw something weird downstairs. In the basement? Aunt Beth asked. Now everyone was attentive towards me. I went downstairs to fetch a replacement cable and I saw the inside of Gran's room. The table went silent, even the young kids at their separate table. Did you see a ghost? Alex tried to tease, but then seemed to sense the strange tension in the room. You went into Gran's room? Reggie said. When I was ready to answer, to tell them about what I saw there was a sound. Everyone startled to their own degrees. Was it a knock on the door, and a loud one at that? Who could be knocking this late? Maybe the police? My mom said strangely and stood to answer it. That didn't make any sense. Mom said they were coming tomorrow. There was something in her voice, as if she was tripping over some lie. John went to her, telling her not to open it. Everyone else was ready to let me continue, but something was wrong. John called out, suddenly distressed. Don't open that door, Marie. I have to. They'll hurt us if I don't. My stomach dropped again. Mom opened the front door. Finally, out of my way. That raspy voice. I knew that voice. I saw everyone's eyes go wide. It was Uncle Jack. I saw 4 figures step in the doorway. Jack, followed by Uncle Nick, Sean, and the 4th that I had only ever seen on the news. What are you doing? Jack shouted, aiming his firearm at my mom. Shut that door! My mom was crying, and so were the kids. She complied and shut the front door. All 4 of them wore dark clothes and had guns. They carried heavy bags in the arm, not holding a weapon. Diego, secure the kitchen, Nick said. The fourth man, likely the one from that blurry camera footage, Diego, looked towards the open kitchen. All of us at the table had stood up. Uncle Ryan and Jerry rushed to the crying kids while Aunt Beth screamed. My mind was reeling. I couldn't do anything but stand there. Diego walked over to us and aimed his gun. On the ground, he said simply. Me, Nat, Alex, and Jean all exchanged looks, but we kneeled down. Hands in the air, kick your phones over, Diego said, voice flat as if he was ordering food at a diner. Jerry followed our example, helping the kids to the ground as we all slid our cell phones to Diego's feet. But my Uncle Ryan still stood. My mom and Uncle John were in the same situation, lying on the ground in the lobby. Diego looked up at Ryan. I said on the ground. Ryan glared and took a few steps closer to Diego. You have a lot of nerve. There was a boom. The loud sound shook my head and reverberated throughout Grant's house. Everyone might have screamed, but I couldn't hear it over the ringing. It seemed as though Ryan had moved very suddenly to the side, as if he were pulled by something. His shoulder was pooling with blood, and he fell. I heard my mom's words as my ears started to clear. You said no one would be hurt. Just take the cars and go, she cried. Uncle Sean kicked her. Shut up, he said. No, not this. This was my worst nightmare. It had all happened so fast. Why are they here? What do they want? Diego took all of our phones, Ryan's included, and walked towards the lobby with a face empty of emotion. What are we going to do? I heard Uncle Nick say as he looked outside of the drawn curtains. There was nothing but darkness out there. We'd buy ourselves a few hours if we took the cars, Jack said, pacing and waving his gun around. But what if we stayed and played a hostage situation out, huh? We could get the cops to give us a chopper, Nick said. No, dumbass, that never works. If we stage a hostage situation here, we can run a few blocks up and steal some cars there. This might really be our chance to lose them, Jack said. How? They will surround the house, Diego said. Well, that's why I brought us here. There's a tunnel in this house that eventually connects to the sewers. Old construction never finished. And a path that I dug for us 16 years ago. Jack eyed my mom as he said the last words, gesturing with the gun. His team seemed to consider Jack's idea. What about these assholes? Diego kicked my Uncle John. They'll just tell the cops that we went that way as soon as we're gone. Don't worry, these kids wouldn't dare. Jack smiled at each of us until his eyes locked with mine. He walked over to me. Kate, Nat cried as Jack grabbed me and pulled me onto my feet. He dragged me across the room by my hair and put the cold metal of the gun barrel to my temple. You won't tell, will you, Marie? My mom sobbed. Let her go, please. I shivered as Jack eyed my face. She's grown into quite the fine young woman, haven't you? I think it would be best if we took you with us. Everyone paused. The basement door creaked a slow sound, more resonant than even the gunshot from before. It exposed darkness that led to the depths of the basement. Jack smiled. Well, well. I didn't think I'd ever see your degrading bag of bones ever again. I'm surprised that you haven't rejoined the Earth by now. Gran didn't reply. All I could see was her cold smile, shining in the dim light of the lobby. 1, 2, tie my shoe. Gran pulled something from her gown pocket. What was that, hag? Jack taunted. 3, 4, lock the door. She shut the basement door. I glanced back and heard the lock of the front door move into place. Clack. 5, 6, pick up sticks. I saw a needle in Gran's hand. 7, 8, make them straight. There was a doll in her hand. She punched a needle through it. Jack released me. Blood soaked the back of my shirt. Jack's lifeless body clapped onto the floor. I saw Jerry covering the eyes and ears of the kids, but after that, all I could do was stare at Gran until the next lines of her song. 9, 10, do it again. Diego aimed as Gran began her song again, but he was too slow. 7, 8, make them straight. Diego's hand was pulled up as if by an invisible string. His hand shook as he fought against it, but the gun aimed towards his own head. He was yelling, "No, no, no!" But the gun fired. Gran was starting the chant again, pulling out a new doll as Nick and Sean ran for the front door. As Gran reached the fourth line of her song, Sean walked to the kitchen table, grabbed a butter knife, and began to stab himself over and over. He fell into a bloody pile. Nick pulled at the door, fumbled with the lock, but the door may as well have been a stone wall. He turned to Gran, dropping a bag that spilled now bloodied $100 bills onto the floor. "Please," he cried, but Gran had already reached the fourth line. 7, 8, make them straight. I looked away just before Nick pulled out his own eyes. He screamed, he bled, and then all was silence. Gran was watching me when I opened my eyes. She still held that odd smile on her face. She slowly lifted a hand and waved to us. She was no longer singing. We stared at each other as I waved back hesitantly. Then Gran opened the basement door and stepped down. A thin hand slowly closed it, and we all listened to her faint footsteps echo. My head spun with the song as it grew quieter, and the police sirens wailed in the distance. Dementia is an odd thing, isn't it? Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, remember to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Then send it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and don't let the shadows get too close.